Today we're going to make some birch trees in the fall kind of pictures. They show foreground, middle ground, background, and they also use overlap. We'll talk about that in a second.
What do I mean when I say foreground, middle ground, background? Foreground is whatever is closest to you in the picture. Background is whatever is farthest away from you. And middle ground is in the middle. When you use foreground, middle ground, and background, it can give your artwork a sense of depth or going back in space. Look how I'm holding the pencil. I'm not holding it tight like I'm doing a math problem. I'm holding it loose in my hands. And my drawing lines are kind of like a controlled scribble. Keep it loose, your tree can go right off the edge of the paper. Don't press too hard with your pencil, because you might have to do some erasing. We'll go over the lines later in marker or crayon or something. Now I'm going to do the same thing and draw trees in the background and the middle ground, giving my picture a nice sense of space or going back three-dimensionally. After that, I'm going to add a horizon line. A horizon line is the line where the sky meets the ground. Putting a horizon line in your artwork can give it the illusion of depth. When I make my horizon line, make it look like it's going back in space. And I'm going to stop when I hit a tree, and then I'm going to continue that line on the other side of the trees. Something that I think makes these kind of drawings look really nice is the use of overlap. Overlap is when something is behind something else in your drawing. I'm going to put a fence in mine, but you can use whatever you want. So my fence is going to be behind the first foreground tree, but in front of the middle ground tree. So when I draw it, I'm going to stop my lines when I hit the foreground tree and then continue them on the other side. I'm also going to make those lines go right over the middle ground tree. Now let's start to add some color and light and shadow to our pictures. Use whatever you have. I'm going to do some watercoloring on mine later, and you might want to do that if you have that. So you might want to use something like permanent markers, crayons, or oil pastels. I'm using oil pastels. If all you have is markers, just use markers. You can do the same kind of picture with just markers. If all you have is just pencils, just put a lot of detail in your drawing. That'll be fine too. What I'm concerned about is that you have foreground, middle ground, and background, and that you have overlap in your picture. I'm going to make some birch trees now. Birch trees are these white bark trees you've probably seen several times. They're white and then have little marks on them. And that's what we're going to make. I'm going to leave the white of the paper for the birch tree bark, but I'm going to make black lines using whatever I have to make the birch bark, where it breaks and has those black marks on it like you saw in those pictures. I'm going to put some white pastel in the sky for clouds. I know you think you can't see it, but we are going to be painting over these later, so you'll see it then. Now, believe it or not, it is almost fall. So in the fall, the leaves start to come off the trees. I'm just going to put a little bit of color down to represent the fallen leaves. I'm going to put a little bit of red, a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow, all over the place in my picture. Now let's talk about light source and shadow. If an object is on the left of where the light is coming from, its shadow will also be on the left. And if an object is on the right of where the light is coming from, its shadow will also be on the right. I'm going to use watercolors to make shadow and show light source on my birch trees. I'm going to use watercolors to make my shadows. Let's say that our light source is coming from the top right of our paper, right off the paper. Maybe there's a sun there. So that means the shadows would be on the left side of the birch trees. So I'm going to paint with a little bit of black watercolor, a black shadow on the left side of my birch trees. And then I'm going to make a shadow starting at the bottom of the tree and going all the way off the paper, as if the light was coming from the top right of my paper. I'm going to do the same thing for all of my trees. The way I have my trees set up, I'm going to have to use that concept of overlap I did with the fence with the shadow, because my foreground tree is going to overlap the background tree's shadow. So I'm going to make the shadow go all the way to the foreground tree, stop, and then I'm going to continue it on the other side of the foreground tree. Continue making your shadows show in light source until all of the trees have both a shadow on the side of them and a shadow going down off the paper. Now, let's add some color to the rest of the picture. Since you used pastels, crayons, or permanent marker, you'll be able to watercolor right over all the colors you put in for the leaves or whatever you have there. Now, these are my ideas for my art project that shows overlap and foreground, middle ground, background, and light source and shadow. If you can figure out a way to put those three things in a picture that isn't like mine, that's fine. If you'd like to do something like with birch trees like mine, that's fine too. You could also add some other stuff to it. You could add tree houses or people playing in the leaves or animals or whatever you want. When I make projects like this, I don't want to limit what you do. I'm just giving you ideas and introducing some concepts to you. So feel free to get creative. I really hope you like this project. I did.
If you have any questions, let me know. I'm always here to help. And if you have a different idea on how you would show foreground, middle ground, background, light source, and overlap, let me know about that too. I'll probably be okay with it.